honor to introduce our speaker for today. His name is Gerry Boylan. He's a minister associate at Unity Louisville, teaches Sunday school, and he's got a private practice consultation. And we're so honored to have you here today, Gerry. Thank you.
We just take a moment to join together in meditation. Take a couple of deep breaths. And a couple more really deep, kind of let your insides stretch open a little bit. Making room. Sometimes we are so tightly wrapped. There's not enough room for joy, peace, and happiness in our lives. So let us just intentionally begin to open to that. You don't have to feel it emotionally, you just know it's there. And one of the ways you will know it is there, as you sit there quietly with your eyes closed and breathing, you will just notice that you have already walked through some very, very dark times. You are still here. Whether you are conscious of it or not, the joy and the peace of God that is already within you has sustained you through those times. Allow yourself to become just gently aware of that power being there within you. If you can imagine or sense that that is alive within you now, and just go to wherever you might be attracted to in your being, where that energy of joy and peace and love might live. And as you do that, imagine or feel yourself breathing into it. As you breathe into it, you allow that energy to flow. Flows through you, touching every cell and fiber of your being. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And for a moment in the silence, simply allow yourself to be in that flow of joy and of love. If you find yourself distracted, just get back to your breath and the flow. Simply knowing that it is there, it has always been there, it will always be there. In the flow. We are encouraged to realize that this flow is always with us. In the light, the dark, and in between. So if you care to, as you are sitting there with your eyes closed, breathing, decided this Sunday to dwell or to stay on the theme of joy or joyfulness. And mostly that's because of me. And it might be because of you as well, but I found that if I'm giving a sermon for you, and it has no relevance to me, then all of us might as well go home right now. And so many times what I find out, first of all, that I know that all of us as human beings are not terribly different from one another. That even though the external path that we might have followed might be extremely different, and maybe if we looked at a short autobiography of each one of us, it might look like we came from different planets perhaps. But if you look deeply within yourself, and you probably know this if you are in any way deeply involved in a good relationship with another human being, if you look deeply inside yourself, you find out not how different we are, but how much the same we are. And so I become amazed sometimes at my ability, at the ability of my mind to create a disaster out of practically nothing. And I know why I do that. I grew up in a typical, normal, dysfunctional family. And one of the things that I learned very, very early was that happiness and joy, as wonderful as it was, could be taken away in the blink of an eye. No rules, no reasons, no rational, in a drunken whim, from joy and peace and love and harmony and happiness to disaster. And so I did this, and I'm sure a lot of us have done this too, because I work with quite a few people, and I found out that I'm not the only one who created this particular defense mechanism. I called it realism. And that is, if you prepare yourself for the worst, then you're ready for it. And if it doesn't happen, well, at least you can feel relieved. Now that was pretty good because, everybody wins, right? But at what price? What am I paying for living in that kind of state of mind? Because I lived so long in fear and protectiveness that I never really questioned that particular philosophy of what I called realism, which really isn't realism. I didn't know then, but I know now, that if I suppress one feeling or emotion, what happens is all of my feelings and emotions start becoming suppressed. It's like the volume gets turned down. So if I refuse to feel one particular thing in my life, my whole feeling level for practically everything begins to deteriorate, to move downward. And so what I wind up doing is I wind up kind of walking through life, kind of trying to keep this very, very steady pace. And I sort of make believe everything's okay, and I've sort of convinced myself that everything's okay. But it really isn't, because I'm just kind of skimming the surface of life. And I realize on some level of my being that there is much more to that. But I'm afraid to look at it. And so somebody might come up to me and say, "Are you joyful?" "Well, I'm not really joyful. I'm okay." "Are you sad?" "Well, I'm not really sad. I'm okay." "Are you okay?" "Would you like to be more than okay?" "I would. I'm tired of being okay. I'm tired of somebody coming, I come up to people sometimes and say, "What's going on in your life?" "Oh, same old, same old." If you ever hear me say that, shoot me. I mean that seriously. Because if today is the same old as yesterday, I'm in deep doo-doo. I'm in trouble. Right? I'm living on the surface of life, and there's absolutely nothing going on, or if there's a lot of things going on, and I don't know what they are. And I don't want to have I was going to say I don't want to have a relationship with somebody who's living on the surface. I can't have a relationship with somebody living on the surface. I can have a surface relationship. We can share thoughts about the weather. How far is that going to go? One of my favorite books years ago was Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. I don't know whether any of you are familiar with that, but every hippie worth his name, is familiar with that one, at least in the 60s, okay? But it's a marvelous little book. It's divided into little chapters, 1.5 pages long, with some marvelous pieces of artwork in there. But one of the things that I got out of that book was many times he would talk about things like joy and sorrow and pain and suffering and things like that. And he would say things such as, that your pain makes room for joy in your life. And your sorrow allows you to experience the happiness or the largeness of life. So don't deny either one or the other. And I lived out of that for a pretty long time because it made perfect sense to me. And it was a little bit of a consolation that all of the pain that I might be experiencing or all of the pain that I might be creating for myself was somehow or another going to be worth it. But I realized fairly recently in my life that I never stopped to question that duality. That you have to have pain in order to have pleasure, or you have to have suffering and sorrow in order to have joy. And I stopped for a minute and I thought about it, isn't what unity is all about is getting rid of dualities? There is only one power and one presence. What will we be told of, about all of the other side of this stuff? We'll be told, yes, we can make that part of our life experience, but you don't have to. What is your higher power or your higher self or God's wish for you? Is it sadness or is it joy? Well, we know what the answer is, right? Do we live out of that truth? Or do we keep playing around with that kind of dichotomy or that duality? Because I've heard this before too, is if you never felt pain, then you'll never really know what joy is. If you've never felt sorrow, then how do you know if you're... Well, you know what? I don't care. I've been the other side. I've been on the other side long enough. The hell with it. I don't care. Can you say that or? I guess so. I don't care. Am I going to experience that stuff? Yes. I'm not saying let's live in la la land, let's pretend that nothing bad is. I am going to experience sorrow, I am going to experience pain, I am going to experience negativity in my life, I'm going to experience fear, I'm going to experience all of those things. Just because I made the resolution that I want to live in this oneness sense doesn't mean that those other things are not going to happen. They are going to happen to me. It's part of life. Now, my job today is how am I going to hold that? How am I going to translate that? How am I going to work with that one? We're told sometimes that you can learn only through either joy or through fear. That's a big one in the Course in Miracles. You either learn through joy or through pain. I sat with that one for a while too. And I certainly could say, well, boy, I've lived a lot of the pain side of things. I certainly think I've learned a lot through pain. But you know what? I haven't learned anything through pain. I've learned what not to do. Don't put your hand on the stove. But have I learned what to do? Have I learned anything really positively moving that moves in my life through pain? And the answer to that question was no. The only things that I've really learned that allow me to move, that allow me to grow, that allow me to be the truth of who I am, and to allow you to be the truth of who you are things that I have learned through joy. And so I want to do that some more. So, why is it so difficult? I did a workshop years ago, and actually the participants in the workshop came up with a name for this. one of the ladies in the workshop said, you know what we have? I said, what? She said, all of us have LBQ. I said, what's that? And she said, a low bliss quotient. All right? And I said, you know, I think you're right. And she said, you know, we kind of followed this up with a discussion. We started talking about this a little bit. And, you know, we said, you know, a lot of us, because a lot of us were addicts. A lot of us still are addicts. Okay, we're just not being addicted today. But anyway, one of the things she said was, you know, that so many of us say, well, you know, the reason why I eat sugar, or the reason why I drink, or the reason why I gamble, or the reason why I run around, or the reason why I do whatever it is, because I have a very low threshold of pain. I can't see. And she said, you know, that's ridiculous. Look at your life right now. You create pain in your own mind. And you're creating it practically every minute. And you create more and more and more and more, and sometimes you don't even stop. He said, you don't have a low threshold of pain. Because let me bet you something. Let me give you 30 seconds of bliss. And I will bet you will find a reason to turn the switch off. Oh, that's enough. Thank you. Time to do laundry. Time to change diapers. Time to read the book. Time to study. Okay, that's enough bliss for right. How much bliss can you stand? I bet you can take on a lot more pain than you can take on bliss. None of us learned this. We all learned stuff. We all, you know, it was like, remember this one? My mother used to say this to me a lot. Don't get too excited now. Remember that one? Okay? It was like I was going to explode if I got too excited. And so I never did. Now, nobody ever put a limit on negativity. Don't get too sad now. Nobody ever put a limit on that one. Right? Wasn't that interesting? So, you know, I grew up, and so a lot of us did this. And, and it's so amazing. Here we come to unity. And one of the first things that I've noticed happens to people when they come to unity is they start dropping all of the old blame, shame, and guilt that they had in the past. You know, because we don't do that here. Isn't that great? You know, but then we invent another kind. We invent New Age shame, pain, and guilt. Huh? Oh, I got sick. I must have created this. What's wrong with me? I fell out of bed last night. There's something wrong with me. And you know what we do? And the worst part of it is we even put that on other people. Oh, she's sick. She got cancer. It must be all of that anger and all of that stuff she's never dealt with. Ooh. What garbage. I don't know about you, but there's enough stuff on my side of the street coming up, right? How do I know what karma that other person is dealing with? How do I know what their soul came into this incarnation for? I've got enough trouble figuring out mine. But the real question is, does that kind of thinking add to my joy or does it take away from it? I don't know about you, but every judgment I have, every judgment I make, all right, is a reflection of fear, and it's my own projection of, you know, if they're sick, okay, that's good, because then if they're sick, then I'm not. If they have to deal with all that stuff, then I don't. Well, that's baloney, but you do. But anyway. Asking, and that might be a great place really to focus on for a minute. Just to simply ask myself, is what I am thinking at this moment, what I am contemplating, or the actions that I'm planning on participating in later on this morning or this afternoon, are they adding to my joy or are they not? What would it be like if you and I certainly include myself in this one, what would it be like if you and I went through a day and stopped every once in a while and said, is what I am doing or what I am thinking making me joyful or not? Think that would change anything? Would for me. You know, here's another big one. I'm saving it. I've got this wonderful jacket in my closet that I just love. and I'm saving it for a special occasion. Take it out of the closet. Put it on. Wear it to Kroger's, grocery shopping. Oh, I've got this wonderful perfume I just absolutely love. And, there's only a quarter of the bottle left. Put it on. Put it on when you go to the bathroom. Enjoy it. You might drop dead tomorrow. And it's still going to be in the medicine cabinet. Here's Jerry's favorite jacket. Look, it looks brand new. That's because I never wore it. How much enjoyment did I get out of that? I'm just as guilty of that as the other people. I've got this beautiful Norton guitar back home. I've got about 3 or 4 others that I bang around with, but I've got this beautiful Norton that's sitting in a case. Because I'm afraid it might get a ding on it. In fact, it did get one ding on it. It's 15 years old, it's got one little ding in the corner. And I showed it to Margot the other day. She said, "Where is it?" And I said, "Well, you have to turn it this way. And you have to have a light kind of focus on it just right, and get out your magnifying glass, and there it, well, I know exactly where it is. There it is." So I'll put it back in the case and get humidified again. Take it out. Play it. It sounds wonderful. You love it. It's a better guitar than you can play, but it sounds fine. Play it anyway. Enjoy it. What good is it going to do in the case? So it gets another ding. Did that mess the sound? Margaret asked me, "Does it sound any different?" I said, "Well, no. But I know that spot is, what difference does it make? I'm saving it. Don't save it." And I'm not suggesting that you go ahead and do anything you want to do. That's the ego's way of trying to create joy. It's not about that at all. Because you've probably done that already. I mean, all of us probably have done a stint of in our lives of doing anything I want to do. If you haven't, try it sometime. It still doesn't work. But if you haven't done it, you might as well, because your ego's always going to wonder about whether or not that's going to work or not. But if you've ever tried doing anything you ever want to do and gone ahead and do it, it still doesn't necessarily make you happy, because it doesn't. All it does is satisfy your ego's hunger for taking control of things. True joy comes from within ourselves. It is the truth of who we really are. Can you get in touch with that? Can you begin to realize truth, joy, love, peace, whatever virtue we're talking about, is not coming from something outside of you and me, but comes from inside. It's always there. A crazy thing that we do with this, though, is we think about it as living in the past somehow or another. If I were to imagine, for instance, being with a couple of my grandkids, like we were over Easter, and Easter egg hunts and eating chocolate and getting it all over yourself and doing whatever it was that they were doing, it's going to bring a smile to my face. Okay, I'm going to physically feel it open my heart. And if I told somebody about this, say, "Oh, well, that's living in the past," I say, "No, it's not living in the past. All I'm using that memory is a key. It's a key to a lock. It's a key to a lock that opens the door to joy that already lives inside me." I'll show you what the other side looks like. I know you can do this, because I know I can do this. I can dredge up fear or guilt that's 50 years old, and I can be in it in a second, in a nanosecond. So why can't I let myself do that with positive feelings? It's not about living in the past. It's about opening, and even though I associate joy with that particular moment, it's much more about opening myself to the joy and the power that already exists inside of me, and already exists inside of you. What makes you joyful? Do it more. What makes you happy, really happy? Do it more. how can I clean the toilets with joy? Because you can. Okay? You might not think that's true, but you can. You can do anything with joy. And all you have to do is not associate it with the event so much, or even the feelings of the emotion. Because hopefully you realize I'm not just talking about feeling, a kind of a little feeling or an emotion. This is the stuff that's deep inside of you and me. When you love when you don't feel like loving. When you care when you don't feel like caring. When you give when you don't feel like giving. Scott Peck said it wonderfully in The Road Less Traveled. He said, a definition of love is the ability to stretch oneself for one's spiritual growth or the growth of another. And so we're talking about the same thing with joy. Being joyful is the ability to stretch oneself, to go beyond those self-imposed limitations, even with joy that we put on ourselves. And asking myself, how can I do that? Because I can open up that storehouse of joy inside of me, which is God's presence, which I believe I know is in all of us. And we can open that up and we can do anything in our lives with joy. Because we can love when we don't feel like loving. We can care when we don't feel like caring. We can give when we don't feel like giving. We can be joyful when we don't feel like being joyful. I mean, we do that all the time, and not in a morose, self-sacrificial kind of way of, putting sackcloth and ashes on. It's not about that at all. It's about knowing that the strength to be joyful, knowing that the strength to be loving, knowing that the strength to be the truth of who you are is deeper than anything else. Joy and gratitude, by their very nature, lift the vibrational level of ourselves and everyone around us. We like to be around happy people. Okay? Don't you? Have you ever walked over to the other side of the street and you saw somebody else coming? Wasn't a happy person like that. We like to be around happy. I wonder what it would be like if we could be that happy person for somebody else. I would encourage each one of us, and I certainly include myself in this kind of, take a step to be joyful today when you don't have to be. So, I can go ahead and do this, but I can do it without thinking. Be joyful about it. Make room for truth. Make room for love. Make room for joy. Make room for peace in your life, because it is there. It's already there. You're not making room for something that isn't there.